of mind, a unique expression of God's love. The manifestation of God's inspiration. I am God's gift, present of mind, a unique expression of God's love. The manifestation of God's inspiration. You are God's gift, present of mind, a unique expression of God's love. The manifestation of God's inspiration. We are God's gift, present of mind, unique expression of God's love. The manifestation of God's inspiration. I am God's gift, present of mind, a unique expression of God's love. The manifestation of God's inspiration. I am God's gift.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you so much. And now we're going to have the opening prayer by Dawn Lee Martin. Take it away, Dawn Lee.
So good morning. I invite each and every one of us to that place of infinite gratitude. Let's begin every spiritual mind treatment with a feeling of gratitude. For that is the gratitude of the oneness that I am. I am spirit. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That is the feeling. That is the tone. That is my heart. And so knowing that there is one source, one power, one life, one infinite intelligence, one all-knowing, all-seeing divine mind that is in me as me individually expressing the Christ consciousness that I know that I am. I am so grateful to celebrate this feeling at the Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, and everywhere that I am. Specifically this morning, where I celebrate with my friends, my spiritual family, and I celebrate in a way that expresses that vibration of gratitude that is greater than ever before. Grateful for the intimacy, the transparency, the authenticity of our spiritual journey as humans, human beings, having a spiritual experience in the right place at the right time, knowing that there is everything we desire as a group, as a community, as a spiritual family made manifest, that our desires are made manifest, that our demonstrations are powerful. This is what I am grateful for, that our healings are powerful. And I am grateful for the highest and best version of health and wealth and happiness and joy, peace, love, beauty. This is what's happening in the subjective mind for each and every one of us. And the universal subjective mind says yes, yes to each and every one of us, allowing that spirit in all of its glory, all of its essences to flow through us as us, and also accepting it, allowing and accepting. And I am grateful I released this word for each and every one of us into that universal law that always mechanically says yes. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Dawn Lee. That was beautiful. And now we're going to read our January affirmation that Neil has graciously pasted into the chat box. I am bold, beautiful, and a glorious demonstration of the Divine One. All of me, all my being is the direct result of my divine birthright and the use of the law. I think, breathe, walk, act from this birthright. As I carefully monitor my use of this law, I do so with great focus and responsibility, and then enjoy the fruits of my conscious labor. All is well in my world. And now I would love to introduce you to Reverend Michelle Wadleigh for our talk today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not muted. Good. I thought I was. I'm not. Good morning. Happy New Year. If I haven't seen you in person and there's some fresh faces, I'm happy to see. Lovely, lovely. So good to have you here. This is a tradition. Every year, we know we start with the beginning of the textbook, and I love doing that. And there's a lot of evidence that says you love doing that because of comments that I've gotten over the years. But so I had a realization, and some it's interesting because you are looking at someone who was not raised in a particular religion, but I was raised metaphysically and spiritually. And so what's happened is for the first almost 2 decades of my life, the conversation around God was not a good conversation. I was not interested in that. And then something happened with my first spiritual teacher, and something she said, I remember realizing that even though she hadn't been using the G word, that she was talking about God. So that was it was just an incredibly sneaky way to get me into that conversation. It is a difficult thing to bridge, for me, to bridge the gap, because I know we have individuals who simply do not want to be in a conversation around God. And I understand it. I do, especially in 2023 with the brain sciences and all the quantum sciences. It is easy to lend ourselves to something outside of our relationship to God. And so I just want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge that that's in the room. It's been in the room. And depending upon who I'm speaking to, it will be in the room. But here's the other thing I know, and I have been witnessing the miraculous happen on a regular basis. A couple of weeks ago, I was chatting with a friend, a colleague. She was having some abdominal distress, some pain, like sharp pain. And in the middle of talking to her, and she wasn't asking me for this, we were chatting about something else. In the middle of talking to her, I said to her, "Do you want a treat?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, please." And we treated, and as I'm treating, before the end of the treatment, the pain started to subside. Now she had been ready to go to the I called her as she was preparing possibly to go to the emergency room. She was just hoping it would pass. But what happened was it passed and she never went to the emergency room and it has not returned. So that sounds like a story. It sounds fantastical possibly, but it's not. This is what happens when we develop a relationship and then we feed it on a regular basis with our studies and with our spiritual practices. You know, Ty's song, the song you just sang, God's Gift. For some, if some people heard that song outside of this atmosphere, outside of this room, they could think that was heretical. That, oh, what do you mean I am God? What do you mean? And that would be deeply offensive to some individuals. But when we know that God is not an entity in and of itself with a personality and a name, we can, if we allow ourselves to surrender into that. This is that magical time of year when we're talking about these new things where I get a little giddy about science of mind, because it's so simple, and yet I know that it challenges many. I know it does. So this happened. Oh, there we go. My screen is not letting me see. So you see, I have a scissor in front of me. What I know about this scissor is that it's been created twice. First, it was created in the mind of someone, and then because they believed in the creation, this desire, they put together all the mechanism. Now for this particular thing, it was a machinery and it was a factory and it was all that. And now I get to use the result of someone's idea. All of life, all of what you and I are seeing are the result. Everything has been created twice. First in the mind of the one dreaming it, and then in actuality. So the other thing that gets me giddy though about it, I'll bring the scissor back up. Even though you and I can't see it, even though it's hard, even though if I were to cut a piece of paper, I'd be dealing with form. What I know is that this form is not truly form, that it's movement. There's movement there. If we could break this down and look at it close enough, what we would see are molecules or atoms or quarks or whatever they're called now, and we would be seeing movement. I don't know about you, but for me, that feels magical to me. That feels absolutely magical. That's something that is solid and that I can touch and break, that it's not really solid. Why does that matter? Because you and I and all that is part of this ethereal, mystical, magical, mysterious power. We're all one with it, and we are constantly in relationship with it. And this is the part where I get on a soapbox, but every single word you and I speak is constantly creating. I remember many, many years ago, I was at Asilomar. If you don't know what Asilomar is a place on the Monterey Peninsula of California. It's beautiful, it's magical, and it's where for I think almost 50 years, religious scientists went every year for like a pilgrimage. And that's where Ernest Holmes gave his last live talk, which became Sermon by the Sea. So I was there and I was talking to a senior minister. I was still new. I was still relatively new. And I was chatting about something. And what happened was that person challenged me that I was living at the effect and not going to cause about the subject, and that my language was not productive. Well, it was productive because all language is productive, but that my language was not going to be productive for the end result that I wanted. Of course, I got a little pissy, a little defensive, and it was like, right? But the truth is, she was right. I was wrong. She was right. And so, and you've heard me say this many times for those of you who've been here, I am annoyingly particular about what comes out of my mouth. If I'm engaging you and I'm in a conversation with you, do I on occasion slip and say something that's irresponsible? Yeah, it happens on occasion. But if I'm talking to you, no matter who I engage, I want to speak the language that lifts, that empowers, because I know that it's God language, it's spirit, it's power. And I can't afford to be lackadaisical. And so whatever I'm doing, whoever I'm conversing with, I will do it from a place of high responsibility. Because the thing I used to teach when we used to actually have classes in a classroom is that when you're using treatment, you need to treat responsibly, clearly. You need to respond. You need to create and use language only affirmatively. And sometimes we think when we're being funny, it doesn't matter, or we're being relaxed, it doesn't matter, or we're in conversations with people that are not in this community, we tend to relax our language. And I'm here to tell you that that is a misuse of the law. It is a misuse of your relationship with the divine. So there are certain things, and what I did last night when I reread the chapter, because I haven't read it through from beginning to end in a minute. So I reread it and I decided I wanted to read it. If this was the only chapter I ever read at the Science Mind textbook, what would I get from it? And I was reminded of the things I'm telling you, but I also was reminded because you've heard certain things come from me as your teacher for 20 years. And there are times I used to realize that some of the things that I would say, I'd later go in the textbook and realize I was repeating Holmes. I wasn't trying to consciously quote, but it had gotten in through my years of study. And so some of the things that I taught you are the result of lessons that I have received from Science of Mind. And one of the main things, and I really want you to hear this, if there's anyone right now currently trying to accomplish a mission, a product, whatever it might be, if any one person can do it, then anyone can do it. If any one person can do it, then anyone can do it. And that was very helpful to me as a young minister and a young student in Science of Mind, because I got reminded, even with watching the big, the bold, the beautiful people like Michael Beckwith, that if anyone can do it, so can I. So whatever it is you have in your heart, if you have, and here's the thing, if you have seen it done for sure, you can also do it. And yet, this is not a multi-level marketing thing. You can surpass. You don't need that person, but it just helps. But to find an example is a beautiful thing. But the only example you need is your heart's desire and surrendering that to the one. The other thing is that I'm never at the mercy of anything. You've heard me say this 1,000 times. I am never at the mercy of anything. And I've been saying that for years, and I use it in my foundational beliefs. And yet, when I read the textbook last night, I realized, oh, pure Science of Mind. If you're here, the gift of Science of Mind is the power of choice and focus and clarity and consciousness. And those are the conversations, especially that happen on Sunday mornings For those of you who don't know about it, we have the most wonderful book study. Every Sunday morning, it's been going on now. I think this is the fourth year. I believe this is the fourth year. And it's where we get to discuss these principles. Okay, if I declare my truth, this is another thing that I've gotten reminded of. If I declare my truth by speaking it and feed it with my actions and spiritual practice, I can expect my desires to demonstrate. Now, but I want you to hear that it's thought plus the feeling tone. They must come together. One activates the other. One activates the other. So it is never just by saying, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. It is about activating the emotional, the energetic emotion inside of you so that something acts upon that term. So whether it is either I am whole, perfect, and complete, or whether it is I'm rich, or I'm successful, or I'm madly, wonderfully in love, no matter the desire, it is the activity in you that you generate that then aligns with the, as Dawn Lee put it so perfectly in her opening treatment, and he says in here, when we dig into the depth of the humanity, we will never be able to go deep into all of what we are as humans, because the second we go far enough, we enter the universal. You and I are never separate from the power of the universal. So the more we go looking, and the more and the deeper we go, we do begin to lose ourselves, but we lose ourselves to find ourselves on a bigger playing field. Now that might sound a little, I don't know what it might sound like, but it's so real. It is so real. It feels like 20 years later to try to have a conversation where I might be trying to convince you that you are God, or you are of God, or you are in relationship with God, feels a little silly. And yet I know that you and I forget. And one of the ways I know is that sometimes I'll be chatting with people and they'll be in discomfort, but they forget to call a practitioner, because somehow we have not established enough the job. Practitioners, spiritual practitioners, their job that they study for is to know your wholeness and truth. They are put here so that we can not be at the mercy of conditions. Now, that is not to say that we don't go to doctors, we do. But I know that someone in here is about to have surgery in a week or two. And I basically said, do not go without calling a practitioner first. Why? Because a practitioner is like an antenna. And the work that we do, it helps me to plug into spirit. But because of my spiritual practice, I have fired that up over years and years and years of cultivating that relationship. So when I'm knowing something for someone, I'm not in hoping and thinking, wishing and wanting. Actually, I am knowing, but I'm deeply, profoundly knowing that the individual that's before me or on the phone is not at the mercy of the condition that they have come to me with. It is so easy for me to deny the pain and the discomfort and to go into the reality of God as you and God as me. In the chapter, on the first chapter, the thing itself is what I'm referring to, in case you didn't catch this. And let him that is athirst come, and whosoever will, let him take the water of life freely. You and I are equal in our availability, or our availability to the one. We are here to accept and allow, accept and allow, accept and allow. When you walk through your day, if there's something you want and you're struggling to completely believe it, I accept and allow my truth. I accept and allow my truth. That begins to cultivate the connection when you can't get to it maybe as directly, because maybe you're not quite in the practice. God maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and reigneth and sendeth rain on the just and the unjust. I was always mildly amused by this because I had a boss. I had a boss who wasn't a great guy. He was a cheater on many levels. Wasn't a great guy, like a great role model in life. He was, participated in a number of illegal things. Let me just say that. But he was rich as hell. And I used to think to myself, how come he's rich and he has this great attitude, and yet I'm struggling because I hadn't gotten that yet? The law is available to all. It is no respecter of persons. The law is available to all. It is no respecter of persons. You've heard this 1,000 times, but do you remember it when a headache comes up? Do you remember it when you're having struggle paying your bill? Do you remember that the power that creates this incredible universe creates through you? And I can access that. Do you remember in the moment? And a practicing religious scientist is someone who stays in the reading, in the spiritual practice, in community, or in a book study, and whatever it is to stay strongly connected. If we closed the doors tomorrow and we were never here, you'd be okay. You would be okay. But in your okayness, you would be very okay as long as you kept practicing and reading and studying. But if you were to leave here tomorrow, don't be surprised. I used to think that once I stretched myself, I could never go back. I got news for you. That's not quite the truth. Without feeding my soul, and now I have a little mechanical device. I don't even know where I got it from. It's like, instead of an Alexa, it's a Google product. So one of my favorite things to do during the day when no one's home is I say, hey, Google, and I've got to be quiet or it'll do it. And I'll say, play Krishna Das. Why? Why Krishna Das? Oh, it did hear me. Hey, Google, stop the music. I was so low. But what happens is with that music, it is a music that for me, it's what gospel does for many others. Gospel has this effect on many people. I love gospel music, some of it, not all equally, but I love it. But for me, when I want to lose myself in my day, that's what I put on the background. So you can trust that me as the spiritual leader, I am never not feeding my heart and soul. I am never not feeding my heart and soul. And one of the beautiful things about being a teacher is because I'm a teacher, I have to be responsible for what I'm teaching. And so I have to do everything I can to continue to cultivate that. So in Living the Science, so we are going to loosely be following the global themes for the year 2023. And I say loosely because I might decide I don't like it. Tony called me up yesterday on one of her days. She didn't like it. So I'm like, okay, we'll make it up as we go along, but we're going to loosely follow it. But I bring that to you because the book that they are using for the year is the same book that we're doing on Sunday mornings, which is Living the Science of Mind. And we have created a year-long reading. So if you want that, even if you don't come on Sunday mornings, just email me or email Neil, and we'll send that to you. Actually, you can go on the website. It's downloaded on the website under the Sunday Inspiration. And it says in the text, in that book, Living the Science of Mind, we live in a spiritual universe. As such, God is all there is, all possibility, all action, For spirit is the invisible essence and substance of all form. And so the important time to remember these things is when fear creeps in, when worry creeps in, when doubt creeps in, when you're not feeling well. So we are going to experience things. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, but we're a little bit at the mercy of the physical body, a little bit more than we'd like to be sometimes. But the fact is, as long as we are remembering that this invisible essence and substance is always pouring itself out. It's always. The question is, are you receiving it? That's the question. Are you making yourself available to spirit as you? Not something bigger than you, but spirit as you and your desires and your ponderances. Are you availing yourself to the one? It also says in the textbook, when God is all there is no duality. Duality is a symptom of our error thinking. When we live in harmony with the allness of spirit, we live in the unity that is the truth. There is, in order for there to be a reality to duality, sounds like a joke, we must purposely, consciously choose to turn away from it. Because in truth, there is no outside. There is no other. Not a simple thing to remember, but a worthy thing to remember. In the Tao, and I love reading from the Tao sometimes. From the Tao, it says, think of me as a bell, says the master. Tap me softly, you get a little ding. Strike me hard and you receive a loud roaring chime. Tao is like the bell and faith is the clapper. Strike Tao with faith and the connection reverberates music of the universe. The harder you strike, the more resonant and beautiful the melody of vibration. If you open yourself to the Tao will eagerly welcome you. If you open yourself to virtue, virtue will become part of you. If you open yourself to loss, the lost are glad to see you. There is nothing outside. You activate it through your passion and conviction. I have to say that in recent months, and it's been a minute, I have been personally struggling to connect with my inspiration. It's been a bit. It's been a task, and even though I've been in community and doing my things, there was something else interrupting my connection, and I was struggling to get back to it. But what I did do was I didn't judge the distance. See, sometimes there might be a little gap between you and the divine for a moment. There are human things and struggles, and maybe you're not feeling well, whatever that is. But the fact is that I also know, while I'm not feeling it, I know it's there. It is never not in charge of my life. It is never not seeking to demonstrate through me. So what's been happening is I'm currently in a lovely conversation with a number of colleagues, and a renewal of my spirit and a renewal of my passion is waking up. Now I'm back to creating, which is lovely. A little bit too much. Sometimes I go over the top, but the fact is I enjoy the activity of creativity. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't allow it. If I had criticized myself for, a spiritual teacher, I'm not supposed to feel, uninspired, or I did all those things that we can do, I would have compounded it. I would have absolutely compounded it, but I didn't. Why? Because of people like you, because you're in my face, because of my husband, because I teach, because I have feeding back to me enough impulse that you draw me back out. So I didn't have the luxury of losing myself in it for longer than it needed to be. They talk about when you go between, when you're seeking to have a new experience before you get there, in between is this liminal experience, this liminal space. It's that space between having your desire, desiring something and having your desire. And that is very uncomfortable for humans. Humans struggle with the unknown. Humans struggle when they're not always feeling that immediate impulse. And yet that liminal space is not unlike the space that happens during birth, during pregnancy. It's not unlike the space that happens when a caterpillar cocoons itself and it liquefies. And in that liquefying, that is a liminal time. I've spoken about this before, but I can't imagine when this creature becomes just this liquid. There's only a single, I forget what it's called. I'm sorry that I can't remember right now, but there's only a single cell. There's a single cell that is holding the vision of the butterfly. It's only one single cell. The rest of it has disappeared. And so it's that cell remembering what it's supposed to be that calls all the rest of it up. And that's all you need. And there are those of you here, and I know this is true. All you need is, if you're struggling, you need one person to believe in you. Just one person. That's all you need. More is great. That's a luxury. But as long as one person says to you, I see you, I believe in you, as long as that happens, that's the reminder when you're struggling to remember yourself. So this week, next week, so this is the thing itself. Next week is the way it works, although it has some other title. So this week, I want to give you an assignment. Are you willing to accept an assignment? Only one hand, a couple hands. Oh, only a couple. Okay. Here's the assignment. It's like in the Jewish tradition. I don't know if anybody here is Jewish. I might trip over this. People put a mezuzah. Jewish families put a mezuzah on outside a doorway, and the mezuzah has inside of it a little prayer. It's a beautiful little thing. And so that prayer is there. It's kind of like a prayer of protection. When I lived in Florham Park a long time ago, I had put my own little prayer in one, and I don't have one at this time, but I think I'm going to get one. And so what happens is every time they walk in or out of their house, that prayer is there. So this isn't quite that, but this is what I'd like you to do. Instead of mindlessly going through your life, instead of mindlessly going for a walk, instead of mindlessly washing the dishes, with everything you pick up, think to yourself, this is God. This is God. Fish food. This is God. I am God. I am the evidence of the one. When you walk mindfully and realize I'm engaging God. When you wash dishes, mindfully remember I am engaging God. And immerse yourself in that reality so that good and very good is activated in you. I'd love to hear. I really love you to take on this challenge and this practice, and I'd love to hear back from you about how it went. Any thoughts or questions about anything that I've said? No?
When is the book study, Reverend Michelle? When's the book study?
Okay, we're going, there's a couple of book studies, and we're gonna put the links in the chat, so you can have them. The first book study that I started was filled, so we started another one. But Dawn Lee, God bless Dawn Lee, she's doing also a book study on Neville Goddard. For any of you who love Neville, get in on that book study. Only 10 people per book study. We're trying to keep it intimate. Thank you for the questions, Uma. Thank you. So anybody else have anything? Okay. So if you're willing to, I'm going to ask you to stand up wherever you are. Get up out of your seat. Engage your body just for the prayer. Just stand up. Stand up for this moment. Yes. And allow the words that I'm about to speak to be that which enters your body temple and activates it. And whether you want to touch your body or hug your body, remember how we were doing that a lot. Just letting your body know that you're paying attention. Oh, yes, dear God, I am sitting here, bathing in the power and the presence and the love of the one. This one loves me so much that it avails itself to me in full measure. I am never outside of it. I am never separate from it. It is wholly beautiful and sacred. The divine only wants for me that which I want for myself. And as I speak this word for this entire community right now, I declare for each of us, I am whole, perfect, and complete. It is natural for my body to heal and to return to wholeness. It is natural, and I am worthy of feeling love of self, of others, to be engaged in healthy, loving relationships. I am worthy and open to abundance and success in all good and glorious ways. I am worthy of the download of spiritual food. So when I walk in my day, I am walking in love. In love. I am the place where love resides. I am that place. I trust this. I accept it. I allow it. And spirit in all of its glory downloads itself as me, as you, as each of us, right here, right now. And I say a holy amen, and so it is.